In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in Black and White emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our world.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of America in Black and White. Tonight on America in Black and White, we welcome a man whose life is a testament to purpose, creativity, and the power of community. Raised by a lineage of strong Black women, his mother and grandmother, Darian Moore grew up watching what it looks like to build something from the ground up. These women didn't just run daycares. They built community, shaped futures, and created safe spaces where children felt seen, loved, and protected. Their legacy became the blueprint for Darian's life. For more than 15 years, Darian has poured into young people as an art educator, youth mentor, and community leader. His work is rooted in intention, clarity, and the belief that every young person deserves the chance to grow into who they're becoming. Today, Darian is expanding his impact through new creative ventures, from his upcoming podcast, Rocking on Purpose, to his home experience company, Refined Theory, which blends wellness, clarity, and intentional living. He is a storyteller, he is a builder, he is a mentor, and he is a man walking boldly in his purpose. Tonight, we get to hear his story, the story behind the work, the heart behind the mission, and the purpose behind the man. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Darian to the show. What just happened? Okay, there we go. Hello, sir. How are you?
Well, in yourself.
I'm excellent. Welcome to the show. It's good to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Is there anything you'd like to say to the audience before we get into the show?
Um, Hello, everybody out there. I hope you enjoy this experience, or hope you enjoy the journey of this conversation. And yeah, buckle up.
Yes, sir. Well, I like to start with where I like for the people to get to know a little bit more about you, the guest, before we get more into the wonderful things that you're doing to help to contribute to building so many communities, especially around your area. When you think about your childhood, what's the first memory that really shaped who you are today?
For me, I would say watching my grandmother at her daycare, and this was years ago, many, many years ago as a young kid, and watching just the whole process of her running it, with touching base with the staff, and just making sure everything was functioning the way it was supposed to, and even downright having a personal relationship with the children, including myself, because I attended the daycare for my adolescence and everything. So actually seeing her in the motion of things, and not even just that, but on top of being the owner, but being able to jump into any position, like when someone called out. For example, I remember in her stories too, of the lunch cook calling out, and so they had to figure out who was going to do the lunch for the kids that day. And so she talked to another one of the teachers and said, "Hey, what would you like to do? Would you like me to cook the food or teach the class?" And it's a whole joke behind it too, because she was known at the time of, as she called it, smoking the food. Which, she had her signature dishes, But she was like, "Hey, I'm a busy woman, and sometimes I step away and may forget." And so she was known to smoke the food here and there. So, what? Long story short, the kids they asked the kids to make the decision, and the kids say, "We want you to teach, and we want the other teacher to cook, because you smoke the food sometimes." So which was hilarious, and I laugh about it today, and I know she'd be smiling right now because that was one of the things that we always had an inside joke because the kids said they would rather her teach, and but that goes to show how she's able to jump in any position, whether it be being the cook that day, whether it being being a teacher that day, whether it being whomever, like the driver. So, and even my mom, for example, my mom worked under my grandmother for many years before she took upon her own daycare, and she would do many things, directing two of them, and as well as driving the van, picking up kids, dropping them off, having that personal connection with parents and with the kids, and just overseeing it. And I'm just, blessed and fortunate to be able to see that growing up and what it really meant to be a model like leader and also developer and business owner.
Mm. Um, Growing up surrounded by strong black women,
Hmm.
what did you learn about leadership before you even had the language for it?
What I would say, leadership, you just got to be ready for whatever. And you have to really focus on the resilience part of it, because there's going to be moments where you're going to be tested with your faith, you're going to be tested with your patience, you're going to be tested with just whatever's going on in the world alone. Because what people don't realize sometimes, being a business owner and being following a purpose and walking by faith, the world has a big effect on that sometimes, especially depending on the climate and everything, with politics, with community, and just culture alone. All those things take an effect of how businesses are run, whether it's a daycare, whether it's a cleaning business. Like I said, those things take a toll. And that resilience is the biggest piece that I take from that. And one of the things, as a business owner, or as a someone that's stepping out and wanting to lead and wanting to be a voice and also an advocate in the community and in the world, you just got to be able to create that thicker skin and stand up to for what you believe in, and also go for what is right.
Well, before we let me go to these next questions, there's two comments here in the chat. This first one, I put it on the screen.
Okay.
It's from Catsy I 6373. She says hi, or he says hi.
Hey, what's going on?
And this one is from Noble Warrior 46. Hi, I just got back from school today.
Okay.
Is that one of your students?
It very well would be, because I've shared this the post the link. So who knows? I don't know. Like, I don't know. I'm not sure who all was logging on, but hey, who's ever out there getting on. So I haven't really, taken note to see who's actually on there. But hey, everybody, what's going on?
Um, so when you think about leadership, as we were talking about, and as you discussed in that last question, can
Hmm.
you tell us what is it about learning and watching, from your grandmother and your mother, and thinking about leadership? How did that cross over into your leadership style today? And what is your leadership style?
For me, like I said, going back to my grandmother, my mother, watching them be able to jump in any role, and also walking through and working from any vantage point. Because as a business owner and a leader, you want to know how all parts work. If you're pushing and functioning a ship, you want to know all the nooks and crannies. You want to know all how the engine works, how rowing the boat, all the things, the different areas getting in between the cracks, so when there's something going on and when there's not something going on, when things are not functioning and moving. So you got to be able to step into any area in any situation. And for me, watching that in front of me, that was one of the biggest parts for me as a leader, and my style of just jumping in, because I believe a leader should not only lead but also be able to step in and be a team player as well. And that's the best way that you show the camaraderie, and you also show, hey, we're in this together, not you're behind me. No, we are in this together, like literally. Because I know it's corny and cliche, but they say there's no I in team.
That's true.
So, you really gotta just think about those elements. And if you're not willing to do everything else that person next to you is willing to do, how could you consider yourself a team? And watching people work their way on up. And in a lot of jobs that I've had in my past and present, I didn't start at the top. I didn't start as an art administrator. I didn't start as a former administrator. I didn't start as a teacher. I worked my way on up. And being that my career path was a little unorthodox and it was a little, you know, not as some people, they would have, I'll go to school for 30 years and I focus on this career and I stay in that lane for those amount of years. That wasn't me. So I've had a lot of different experiences in different fields, but also it went back to my leadership because what I did in a lot of my jobs, I ended up being in management. So, my boss saw what they saw in me and wanted to say, hey, I think you'd be great for this. And next thing you know, I was leading and coaching others and preparing them for the next level. But going from my perspective and how I saw things should be going and, just getting on the ground because you got to be on the ground to really see even for a leader, if you're leading a country, you got to know what the people are going through. You have to talk to the people and walk with them and be able to relate to them. And if you can't get to those levels, how could you support the people? How could you lead the people? And that, that goes back to the style of leadership and that, that I focus on because at the end of the day, you have to be able to speak to it. You can't speak to something that you know nothing about.
You know what? Ooh, I know a lot of folk that's in leadership right now that do just that.
Yeah.
So, how did watching your mother and grandmother run their daycares influence the way you show up for your community right now?
Just being there in the stories, because what I really enjoy about working in the community is having that connection with my youth and young people and also the families, because my job and a lot of times we as professionals we see our colleagues and our whether you teach or whatever it is, you see that atmosphere more than you see your own family members. So in essence they become your family members, and you get used to that whole functionality of just, hey, what's going on, how you doing, and breaking that fourth wall and really just seeing who who you surround yourself by and what community you're working and thriving in. And it's so important for me to really be hands on with not only learning my students but also learning their families and what they come from, and like different ways that I can support them, because as a leader and a community person with youth and young adult, a lot of times, kids from depending on the background, they come to us for different advice, different questions, and they want to, hey, what do you think about this? Or hey, well, I feel this way. And sometimes they come to us about things they don't necessarily feel as comfortable going to their parents for. And you have to be able to be open and meet them where they are, but also getting the parents involved with that as well. And reminding the parents that and other individuals out there that it takes a community to raise a child, but it also takes a community to sustain an adult. And so none of us should be able to or should be worried about doing it alone, because you don't want to do this alone. Living is not a thing to be done alone. It's a thing to be done with the community and with the support team. And I'm thankful and grateful for my community and that I've had from growing up all the way up until now, because it's definitely sustained me.
Well, Noble Warrior just put another comment here, and he says, I dream about being a YouTuber one day.
Okay.
Um, so, what did home feel like for you growing up? What did it feel like?
Before I answer that question, for the comment being about being a YouTuber one day, what I'll say to the young person, and I usually say this to my students: if you have a dream, you should have started yesterday. And I'm gonna say this again: if you have a dream, you should have started yesterday. Because I look at it this way: if I had grown up with all the advancements and the technologies like Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, all those things as a child or as a young person, boy, it would have been a different story right now. I mean, I probably would I've still been in community, yeah, but would I still? It would have been a different level, a different impact.
Right.
And they say it's never too late, but for these kids that are growing up with it and surrounded by it, take advantage. If you have a vision, you have a dream, you have a purpose, go for it. Life is limited, it's short. Be in the moment and capture that moment when you can.
That is the one thing I gotta say, as in speaking to you before the show, and as I see now as we're developing, the wonderful things that you're doing in the community. It seems like you're such a hands-on person and so approachable that this is what helps to establish the relationship you have with your kids. Is that true?
Yes. And with me and my students and things, every time I interact with them, it's funny because I'm either that, kind of father figure for those who don't have or didn't grow up with a father, and then also an uncle figure for those who had a father. And my approach, is funny because I'm very goofy in my personal life. And so I'm silly and we joke around with my family and my friends. But then when I'm teaching or in the studio or I'm directing, that's a whole different person. It's like, hey, let's go. We got business to do. Let's get it in and get it done. Now, here and there, I may joke with my kids, but they often joke with me and laugh, say, oh, Mr. Darian, wait, are you good today? I'm good. Let's go. Because young people, you can't give them too much room to run with because then they'll run with it. And especially when you're fighting devices and technology and different things like that, you got to keep them on because if you don't, their mind wanders, even if they don't have the device in front of them. They could be, I've seen it where kids are, you can tell by, and working in dance and performance, you can tell their head when they start to run and think about other things like, I'm like, hey, bring it back. Let's get back to task. Because, you let them run too long and trip out. Next thing you know, it's organized chaos. So, yeah.
So let's go back to that question.
Yes. All right.
What did home feel like for you growing up?
Home. Home was very different for me because me being the middle of three, and me also being the very arts kid because my brother was very much into sports and he was like a little older, not a lot, but he had his own friends and doing his own thing. And my sister, she was 5 years younger than I, and so she had her own thing going on. So I was usually kind of like, if I didn't have my own friends, I was pretty much a lot to myself. But, my parents and my family always supported me in my adventures when I was growing up, whether it was a show, whether it was an activity, or, they would always support. If they couldn't be at a meeting, they would definitely be in the audience every time. They would send me to the studio when I was singing. But, as far as growing up, like I really developed a lot of my friends and community too, as well, outside in like the school area and just being in rehearsals with friends and being all the different groups that I used to do. And even with church, very involved with church growing up. So, my family was big. My family's always been big on, keeping God first and really, and my mom she preaches on train up a child the way she go and they will never, stray. And so she's always kept that part very essential. And she, being a pastor, she doesn't let me slip, but she holds me accountable. And, we have that relationship that we have grown into that's very strong today where we can talk about just about anything. And she reminds me of my core values and, you know, growing up as a kid in the artistic world and really finding yourself. It's an interesting journey, but I definitely would say, as a kid, being very involved in music and dance, it really, in essence, saved my life. Not to be, too deep, but to be very direct, it did because it gave me a safe place to create and a safe place to, have an outlet. And that's the thing that why I think the center part, and it goes back to the heart of me of working with youth and young adult in the arts because what it did for me. And that's, something that I'll probably be with me till the day I die. And, saying that, hey, whether I was able to create when I would get, frustrated at home with things with maybe a family member or a sibling, I would close myself in a room in the bonus room and just put on music and I would dance. Or if I was home by myself, a lot of times, and I was going through something, I would just walk around the house and I would sing and make up songs. So I was a different kid, but it led me to here. So and because a lot of those things I still use to create and work with in the jobs that I do. So I don't take it for granted, even though it was an interesting journey, but it was a journey that helped shape me to who I am today.
Wow. So, so tell us this because I know community is very important to you.
Hmm.
So when you think of that term community, tell us what does that mean to you?
Community is it's a plethora of things. It's a list that goes on. It's a safe space. It's a place where you can go to, you know, really. escape away to different facets of yourself when you're going through things, because we all have our moments. Nobody's completely, oh, I'm happy, I'm ready to go every day. And you, but you're having that different, it's broken up into parts. So, like for example, my community, when I think about my own community, I have my group of friends and family that I know I have for specific things. And when I'm going through something, I know those friends that I can talk to and vent to, that doesn't come from a place of judgment. They just like, hey, go ahead, what's up, what's going on, and we can usually bounce off of each other. And then you have those friends where you can talk to spiritually about, hey, is this sound like, even for example, my mother, talking to her about what feels right and what's my walk, and just like kind of really checking up on myself, giving myself like a self check. And even with my siblings, how we grew up together, and knowing that does this line up, or how are we all doing, like just checking the different areas, having those things, those areas around you that helps you remain as a holistic human being. And community, that's what that encompasses. So having that spiritual, that mental, that physical, that whole well-rounded area, and I would say embodiment around you, where you can tap into different areas and be able to, go through and be a healthy human being. Because in this world we're in today, it's very hard sometimes to stay sane. Because when you turn on the TV, you turn on the TV, and let alone the news, for example, and it can be very depressing. And you just really have to turn it off for a while and really take a walk or do whatever you do to just really release all the information and just to really escape, because it can be depressing. And then even when you see out here, when people are doing what they can to survive, and they're surviving off the bare minimum,
Yeah.
when prices are rising, and jobs are getting cut, there are jobs out here that's not really paying enough, but then yet we're supposed to survive as citizens in this country. And so you know it makes me think about when I, reflect on my own self, my community, and that's really what I've been blessed with, to have a strong community behind me as an adult. When I have gone through my personal things and trials, I've either had somebody to lean on or support, be a support to me, and really push me and help me to stay resilient in that situation. Like, hey, I need a pep talk, or I need, hey, D, you looking for a job? Hey, let me send you this. Or I filled this out and I sent this to you. Or random, this is for gas money. Those different things, oh, hey, let me pray with you, son. Or, I thought about you, so I want to check in on you, different projects. So I've always had a community that, has been there, and that has
That has
reminded me
reminded me
what
what
community is.
is.
And
And
so
so
I'm
I'm
grateful for that.
grateful. So, in being a creative,
Hmm.
tell us, what does that, how does that make you feel from your mental perspective as well as your physical perspective? Because you're like doing so many things when it comes to being a creative,
Hmm.
and that takes a lot and that's demanding. Tell us, what's that like for you?
Well, that part is interesting because growing up, I was a really hyper kid. So I'm just giving you a little backstory. Look, I was very much a hyper kid and had a lot of energy and was ready to go all the time. And my parents, and this was before, they did a lot of testing on kids, or saying, oh, this kid needs to be on this because, they're very hyperactive. No, what parents did back in those days, especially black parents, let's get them involved in activities. And I did a lot of activities, whether it was karate, whether it was dance, music, all the things. I was in a gifted art group when I was in elementary. So in every area of arts, not just performing arts, but visual arts, it was like a whole buffet of things. And but when I would get home, I'll pass out, go to sleep if I've already done my homework. So, and reboot, do it again. But carrying it over to my adulthood, it's funny. I look at it now because it's when you do different things in different sectors, it's almost like, which one do I pick? And because you get older, like, and I've done a lot of different things. Growing up, dancing in companies, performing and choreographing. I In my singing career that I've had, weddings. Another side note or backstory. 2007, I sang with Patti LaBelle, Clash of the Choirs, and I was a part of the choir. and we actually sung backup for her at a couple of events after that. So, and I was able to, be lucky enough to go to her house for the holidays and really experience that, which was so out of this world. It was crazy, but and an experience that I'll never forget. And so, that being said, I've had so many different experiences in these different segues of art. And now, circling back to my visual arts, love and what I do, used to do drawing. I haven't done it heavily like I used to when I was young, but I've been getting back into it. And I kind of apply it to like where, now that I have this cleaning, organizing, and staging business. And I've also used it in my personal life where if I do a project, for example, I redid my grandmother's backyard. Years ago when before she had passed away, and that was one of her birthday gifts, flipping her yard into a whole experience, into a this whole vacation thing. So creating a patio with a gazebo and putting actual down stones and rocks, but I sketched it out first and then really kind of did it in physical. And so applying those parts of my background and really trying to just say, hey, let me tap into this. And that was during COVID. So it really helped. And it was another thing that helped me stay sane during that time. 'Cause, you couldn't go nowhere. You couldn't do nothing. And, here I am. I'm taking care of the 80 something year old and I have a dog and we're trapped in the house. Like we really either go to the store or I take him for a walk. That's about the gist of my day. So it's like, or I'm teaching on Zoom. So I'm like, I need something else to do. Because you watch streaming like Netflix and everything else all day. So it's like, I need another activity, which was real helpful and healthy to get through those times. So, you know, circling back to your question, it's really interesting as an adult because now that I'm back into like really embracing those different areas, it's kind of like, how do I remain in the professional world like a 9 to 5 and still wanting to embrace all these different aspects? So it's like, should I be doing this full time or still trying to do the balancing act? And that's where it gets difficult. It's like, look, if I can just figure out how to do just these things for full time, then boom, I figured it out. But again, when you have bills and you have to meet those things that don't stop. And then, for in the art world, if you are not at a certain level or a certain connect at some point, it's the pay is may or may not be what we also think of it, because in the artistic world, for dance, on a totem pole, performers, backup dancers, do they make a lot? I mean, it depends on who you're dancing behind. It depends on how many shows you're getting. And even artists, depends on your reputation and how you built that up, and your rapport as far as in with the dealers and the museums, all those different areas in the arts. Even as a singer, if you haven't done these things, you know the reward, it's more so in yourself and what you've accomplished versus the monetized piece that could be really big or not. So you have to really put in time and work in each area to actually see that. But when you are a person as myself, when I have a love and a drive for all those different areas, it's like at the age of 42, let's see, what am I going to do? How do I channel it to, become a place in a space where I can do all of them and kind of just function and make that my career now in this day and age? Or, like I said before, still balance it out, have that full 9 to 5 or whatever it is, and then my part time, do this over here, do that. And so, it's the balancing act at the end of the day, and picking and choosing your battles.
So, when did you first realize that your upbringing was preparing you for something bigger?
Oh boy. Well, it's funny because when I was growing up, not only was I always surrounded and put in placed in situations where, hey, Darren, we need you to do this. When I graduated from my grandmother's daycare, I remember we, what song was it? Was it "We Are the World"? It was a song that they asked me to lead as a kid, and I was only 5, and singing in that for the graduation ceremony. And that was a big thing. Well, it didn't seem as a big thing to me, but it's a big thing for them. because my family always say, "Oh, he can sing. Let him sing. Put him out in the forefront." But I'm like, okay, I'm just doing what I like to do. I didn't see it as it was that big of a deal. But then when they
Right.
mentioned like, "Oh yeah, you remember Darian did this, Darian did," I'm like, "Oh okay, yeah." So I guess, and then that segue into performing in church. Growing up, I did a lot of the we had either anniversaries or different things like that. I either danced or sang in church, which hey, I'm serving God, I'm doing that. Where it was, it didn't seem as it was a big thing spiritually, but in the forefront, it's like, okay, this is what I do. And today, it all those things and different things leading up to that, even going like with the Clash the Choirs with Patty, or let's say doing the different dance companies, all those things, it when I think about where I'm at today, as far as working with community and young people and in the arts, it makes sense because it was giving me experience to what to guide them with and how to prepare them for whatever road they may choose. Because I've worked in corporate as well, so I've dabbled and dabbled in a lot of different areas career wise. And I think that definitely donates to who I am in my career today as far as working with community and young people. Because, no matter what lane you pick or choose, you always want to choose something that has a purpose. And I tell my students today, all the time, I said, wherever you go, make sure there's purpose because that will keep you a place that you are purposeful and that you can be used in what that you do or that you do or you're gifted to do or you're blessed with. That is where you're supposed to be. As long as you have purpose in that place, that is where you're supposed to be. As soon as your purpose is not appreciated, or as soon as you no longer have a purpose there at whatever you're at, it's time to move on. And so that's circling back around to that I guess me and my different journeys and careers that I've had, and also embracing the different artistic backgrounds kind of really shaped me to be the type of community leader or art administrator that I am today.
Well, I'm not sure what this language is, but it's a hand waving from this individual. I don't want to say your name wrong, but I don't know what that language is. But anyway, it's a hand waving is what it is.
Okay. Hello.
So as we're speaking about community and your artwork,
Hmm.
and and just when I think of the arts, and I think about, I know that that's definitely community work
Hmm.
because it helps you to connect to other people, and you're just able to do so many things, especially if you're performing, like you said, you do dance
Yeah.
and things of that nature. So as we transition over to your work in arts education and creative work,
Hmm.
can you tell us what first pulled you into the world of dance and the arts?
Growing up, because at first it was just my outlet. And it was something like I would say growing up, I was one of those kids that, I love to move and I had a lot of energy and I would watch a lot of different things. I was watch Michael Jackson. I would watch Prince. I would watch all those performers on TV like, ooh, I'm going to do this. And I would be in the living room or in front of the TV trying to figure out how to do those moves. And I love music. And I grew up on listening to all different types of music, R&B, jazz, rock, hip hop, all the things. And, old school, new school, that was me. And so um, those things are, it really segued me into, being the in that situation, that capacity, and it shaped me into this person. So, it really it went from a passion to just, hey, why don't I do this professionally? And because at first, not gonna lie, when I was a kid, I also loved Legos too. And I even love Legos to this day as an adult. I'm not afraid.
Okay.
I'm not afraid to admit it. And my friends laugh about. I even have a couple of gadgets upstairs, but it's one of those things that embracing that engineering part of my mind. And when I was a young kid, I used to be so fascinated and loving with Legos that I said I want to be an architect one day. And I used to tell my family, my parents, I said I'm gonna, and I used to tell my grandmother this. I said, I'm gonna build your house, grandma. I'm gonna design your house for you. And she said, okay. And I would draw, and I would, sketch out these different things when Legos, have the Legos that, they come with instructions and come with actual designs that you build. And then you have the freelancing where you just create your own thing. And I would be in there playing Legos for hours. Like when I had Legos and things like that, my parents didn't have to worry about it. But if I wasn't doing that, they'd be like, where is he? It's quiet. And so, you know, getting to that, but as I got older and having that dream of being an architect, and I was like, how many years do I have to be in school? How much math do I have? You know what? Never mind. Never mind. I said, you know what? Let me tip back over to the things that I actually also enjoy doing. Not just that part, but singing, the dancing. I remember specifically in middle school. I wonder what she is today, Miss Zimick. I think that's her name. I was in the sixth grade and I took dance because it was elective. I said, I'm going to take dance, even though I, would dance around the house and do those things when I was a kid. But that was one of my first time taking dance in the school. And I took dance and I really, really, really enjoyed it. And it was fun. And I remember her coming to me and saying, hey, you're really great at this. You should take it up. I said, okay. I was already in chorus and I was doing that and lead, like singing and doing those things in chorus. So that was one thing. I said, okay, maybe dance too. Let me take this seriously. And so I kept taking dance from then on there. By the time I got to high school, I was already on dance team. And then I had one of the youngest ones on dance team. And then I was in chorus. And by my sophomore year, I was in honors chorus. And so those things, and then I was still in art and theater. So, it was like, hey, why not stick with it and see where it goes? And because a lot of people, they do dance or music or things like that, and they may or may not take it as a career afterwards. And so I just want to kind of be different. And, where people are, going to a regular college or HBCU. Me, I went to an arts university. My brother and sister, they're both are A&T alumni. And so they both went to A&T, and, I grew up being spending a lot of time at my grandmother's, which was around the corner from North Carolina Central University, is another HBCU. And so really seeing the HBCU life was like, oh, this is really dope. And I love the culture, but artistically, I want to do something different. And so that's when, I decided to go to an arts university in Philly. So,
So, when you think about all of these things from the
mhm,
compilations of what you're doing, can
mhm.
you tell us how do you translate or transcend that over into your working with your students from the arts perspective?
It's funny you say that now because I have watched me being as passionate as I've always been with the arts because of what it's done for me personally. And one of my biggest idols or people I look up to, I would say, in the performing arts world is Debbie Allen. And for somebody who does just about any and everything in the industry, whether it be directing, whether it be, acting, choreography, all the things, and, executive director over shows and sitcoms, like there's nothing that she can't do or hasn't done. And I've always admired that, even going back to Fame and a lot of back in the day, because again, going back to how I teach and how I teach my students, I can be real stern and then I'll joke here and there. They're like, is it okay to laugh? I don't know, because you know how you get. I was like, yes. And they would always say, and I remember showing them the Hot Chocolate Nutcracker documentary of Debbie Allen, or either Fame, and they're like, "Oh, Mr. Darian, that's you right there." I'm like, "What do you mean? That's how you teach." I'm like, "Whatever," but I say that whatever to them, but in my mind, I'm like, "Yes, yes." Like if that's the kind of impact that I'm striving for, somebody that will be for the young people, someone real, someone down to earth, someone that will give them what they need to hear, not what they want to hear, but also that will set an example for them and you know create that world that no, I'm not telling you it's impossible. I'm telling you with hard work, diligence, and being consistent will get you where you need to be, whether you're trying to be a professional dancer, a doctor, a lawyer, whatever it is. You just got to be consistent with your work ethic. You have to be consistent on how you do things. And that really carried over for me. That's because, again, in my personal life, I can be very silly. But when it comes to getting work done, I'm very focused and very like, let's get into the game so we can get in and get out. And, with my kids, that's how I've always instilled in my teaching that, we can joke around as soon as we get this project done. Or if we joke around in between, let's make sure we're working as well. And, so we don't lose sight of the goal. And, that is how I would say my teaching and how things have been shaped today. And, and that's also, I tell my kids, my new phrase that I tell them now at the studio is I said, take me somewhere. When they're performing, whether you're acting, dancing, singing, take me somewhere. I don't want to be here right now. I want to be somewhere else mentally. Take me somewhere. When you're on stage, who are you? You're not you. You're someone else. And I remind them, this is a place where you can be safe, but you can also be whatever you want to be. Like the sky's the limit. You're not in a judgmental place. You're not in a place where people are looking for you to fail. They want to see you fly, whatever opportunity you have, whatever place you're in on that moment in that stage. And being a teacher, I've also had the privilege of dancing and performing or singing with my kids so they can see what it feels like and being in that arena with them and going like being a community leader that I'm not afraid to be in whatever position. The kids say, hey, Mr. Darian, Mr. Moore, you singing with us? Or you dancing with us? I was like, sure, I'll do it. Because, I don't want to let my kids down, but I also want to show them that I'm also still in this journey with you.
That is, I think your kids have learned more from you than they probably would have with someone that would have just allocated to do a job,
Right.
because I think the connection
Mm-hmm.
and that passion that you're talking about, it just shines through,
Mm-hmm.
for how you like to get, that work done.
Yeah.
um can you tell us, how did the arts become a language for you, a way to express the words that you couldn't?
Um, Being that, for example, dance is a universal language. It doesn't require anyone to speak. It doesn't require you to even make eye contact with another individual. But it's one of those things where you can express yourself. You don't have to worry about what somebody's saying or doing, but you're just fully, authentically expressing yourself. And it being a way and an outlet where I could move or choreograph something or just move in the studio and forget about where I was, forget about my stresses, even singing. Certain place when I sing certain things or go to certain, like one of my favorite singers to this day, and everybody knows me personally, like, oh boy, yeah, we know. But Donnie Hathaway, and one of my favorite male singers, and because it's like every time I hear him sing, every time I have watched him perform on documentary footage, because of course he passed away before I was even born, but to but I've seen his daughter live, which was amazing, Layla Hathaway. But to hear his material, you can hear the spirit, you can hear the soul, you can hear the depths of what he was singing about and where he was going. And, having that freedom to really create and really to just express yourself without worried about what somebody was thinking or saying. And that's what I loved about, just the arts in general and it being a way of communicating without having to really say anything and being universal that, hey, a singer can sing a whole other language, but their emotion, their piece behind their music will give you an insight to what they're singing about. A dance, I've watched all different types of dance from all over the world, and it's beautiful to see the different interpretations of love, of anger, of madness from different, backgrounds because you can see some of the similarities and collective expressions from these different dances, but it's unified. So it goes to show, like, having that freedom, that creativity to be able to express yourself without feeling judged or feeling, you know, looked at in a way that people may not understand.
So, what do you love most about teaching through movement and creativity?
Hmm. I think I say. what I love most is experimenting and really coming up with new things and just really being able to. Because when I go in the studio and I'm working with my students or other dancers, or we're doing a music thing, it's I call it the lab. We're going in to experiment. If I don't already have something, sketched out in my mind of what we're doing, or we've sat down and talked it through, it's really just experimenting and seeing where the moment takes us and having that space to really do that. And I think it also reminds me again of being a big kid in essence. My childhood, I can still tap into being connected to my adolescence without being judged, without seeing like, oh, this isn't serious. No, this is very serious in the work that I'm creating, but it connects me to my younger self because my younger self is what installed this into it was installed in the first place. And I think having that, not abandoning your younger self and your fantasies or your wishes, creating and your creativity side, because we get so when you get old and older and people like, oh, we don't have time for this, or we have these things to take care of, we don't have time to sit. Says who? Why? I said, look, hey, I'm in here doing this. And like when I have at Walltown Children's Theaters, where I do my art administration work and brand work, and where we have a summer camps, and that's when I really enjoy having that element where I can be a big kid because we create things from scratch in those camps. I sit and I brainstorm with these kids, and I allow them to go into a place that they don't normally go into. And nowadays, it's hard to do that with kids because you battle with technology. When you have everything right there at your reach to create for yourself, how do you battle with that? Like as a human being, it's like, so how do I with technology and get these kids to pull them in? Because technology, I've seen it happen over the years with young people. In a way, it's taken away kids' level to create as much as they used to because they don't have to imagine. It's already there. They speak it and it's there, or they type it, it's there. But how do we, as young kids, I'm sure as yourself and myself, when I didn't grow up with all these technologies, my imagination would be so like, ooh, or you were a kid, you would create a tent or this, or you'd be outside and treehouse, like you experienced and you really went outside the box. You created games. But now
Yes.
these kids, it's like we lazy. We don't have to create anything. It's right there.
Well, I think that's due to that's a societal thing because
Mm-hmm.
what you're saying about that is so true because kids today don't critically think.
No.
And when it comes to school, they're not allowed to critically think because they have to focus on working on those computers
Yeah.
and studying to pass a test and not learn.
And
So,
that's what. Yeah. Not to cut you off, but that's what circles back around to go along to your question. That's what really inspires me the most of all things when it comes to being a creative and teaching young people is that teaching them how to think, not what to think. And because I don't want to tell you this is this. No, it's black. No, 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 it's white. No, it's black. No, I want you to think, how to look at things, how to look at the world, how to look at this piece. You got to come from different aspects. What the way you may view it may be different from the way they view it. Does it make it right or wrong? No, it's just a view. It's when you go into the art museum and you see two people walk up to a painting. Will you have the same interpretation for both people? No. But the fact that you took the time to really observe and really look at the artwork and really take from it what you need and remove things that you don't need or don't want, you have your interpretation. But nowadays we don't, and I say we as in society, we don't give young people enough time to really process that, to be able to be critical thinkers and say, well, why this, why do you choose to do this, why do you choose to be this way, why do you choose to react this way, versus saying, oh, I'm just expressing myself, oh, I'm just this, or I don't want to be. With every action there's a reaction. So you got to understand, like when you're in the process of doing whatever you're doing, you have to understand what it creates in your atmosphere. And that's with the critical thinking.
so how do young people respond when they realize you see them? I mean, you really see them.
Kids nowadays they have their own way of giving you your flowers without them wanting to know, because they don't want. And it's like, especially those kids that you have that love hate relationship where it's like they love you as a teacher, but you always, you always get on their nerves, and vice versa. And but when you eventually you let them know you see them, and you break that fourth wall of trust, you break that fourth wall of, hey, you're safe, or hey, do this, I'm backing you, I support you. They have their own. I've had many students have their own way of, whether it be, being able to sit down and talk to me about, hey, their day, or talk about what's going on at school, or even expressing how they feel about a piece of work, or saying, hey, I got this today on my test, or hey, Miss Darian, you know I want to look into this, or I want to do this dance, or I want you, or inviting them inviting me to a show or a game, a sports that they play. Those are the different ways that they really show how they appreciate me, and how I've given them that level of comfort, whether I know I see them, and that's how that repay, and that giving the flowers, like, hey, thank you. And because one thing youth and young people, and I know for myself, I definitely appreciated then, was consistency. And it's hard nowadays in the educational system, the rate when schools are being funds are being cut, and jobs are, teaching is not the greatest profession anymore these days, because schools are very difficult, whether it be with behavior with students, or whether it be with problems with administration. Like, there's a lot of different elements that really get in the way of being productive as a teacher these days, and or any office in the school arena. And so when you have high turnover rates, or people leaving and quitting, kids don't have consistency anymore in the community. And a lot of times in the community, where's the first place that a kid looks for community? A school. But when they can't find consistency there, then they start looking elsewhere. If they're not a part of a group, then sometimes it could be the streets. Sometimes it could be in those group of friends that they shouldn't be hanging around. So it varies. But for me to be able to have myself to have that level of consistency with these, especially at the organization that I've been at, next year to be 10 years, and to be a familiar face, to be a consistent face, to be a consistent support and leader, it really does something for my health and well-being, physically and emotionally, because it allows, you say, it goes back to purpose, knowing that, reminding me I have a purpose, knowing that my community looks forward to me showing up, they look forward to me being there. And when I'm not there or showing up, they're like, hey, you all right, where are you, everything okay? Versus saying, well, we haven't seen Darian. Oh well, no. When you have a tight community, or you have a community that really cares authentically about you, they check in on you. And we have those people in our lives that that are strong, and that they always have it together on the outside. And sometimes we forget to check on those people. And some of my friends remind me to say, "Hey, you good?" Because I know you usually are going and have your thing together. I'm like, "No, not today. How you know?" There's like, because you're not doing your normal. And so, but again, going back to community. So, but
So, so what's that one moment in your arts education journey you see
mhm,
that still moves you?
that still moves me
That one moment in your arts education.
is watching my current as well as former students excel. And especially being that I'm coming upon 10 years next year at the organization, at my organization where I work, it's crazy, because it's like I've seen so many kids come, go, and go off and do great things. I have a student, a former student of mine. She lives in Texas right now, but she's, I believe, works in law. And one of my former students, and she still to this day, she'll call me dad. And um,
Man,
and she's from a very traditional African family, but I think she's the first generation American. And how I watched her with the hard work that she's done and how she's carried herself, and now just this past year she joined the board for the organization, and to see the level of oh, I had an impact on this person, on this young person. Now look at them. Or I see the other kids, like they're not kids anymore, they're adults in that same arena where I taught once upon a time. They've come back as adults, and we've created an adult company with them. And you know, seeing these kids go out into the real world and excel and live a little, but also be reminded of the foundation that they came from and really appreciate and hone in on that. It's a heartfelt thing and a big place of gratitude. And, it's something I don't take lightly. And that's the part that really pushes me to keep going, and really to still do what it is that I do. Because, working in this arena is not always easy, but it is, I would say at this point, it is worth it. It is definitely worth it because I don't have any of my own kids, like biologically, but I have been able to impact so many in my day and age, and I forget how many people or kids I taught until like I could be somewhere random. Oh, Mr. I'm like, oh wow, yeah, I did teach you. Sorry, it's been a long time, and but to see they're doing great things, and some kids they may remember me, and I may or may not necessarily remember them right away. That being purposeful, it really hits different. So yeah, that's one of my biggest takeaways from being in that sector.
As I just and again, as I just think about your connection is one that I think a lot of I'm not saying all educators don't have
Hmm.
that connection, but your connection is very very good because it's strong and it's very truthful for these
Hmm.
kids because it helps to keep them in going in the right direction.
Hmm.
Has there ever been a point, where in working with your kids that you've had one or two that you've had to work extra hard with keeping them
Oh,
in line?
oh yeah, oh yeah, and it's crazy because in the past, those have been the students that really cling to me, which is hilarious. Because I've had kids where I remember having this one kid at a school I used to teach at. And when I met him, he was in the second or first grade, and the kids are heavily talented and could dance, sing a little bit, but he was very and comedic, and he could act. And I created a play at this school where I was teaching at, and it was centered around his main character, around him. And I kept telling him, and this boy was high energy, and he kind of reminded me in ways of myself, but a little bit more edginess. And I would say, hey, if you want to have this part, I need you to shape up and get it together. Because if you can't get it together, I will give it to somebody else. And watching like him taking that serious, like, hey, I won't lose this part. But at the same time, the going back and forth, and I have to get on him, is he doing his work? Or is he not, is he behaving in class? Because that's one thing I've always, take accountability with my students. Always take accountability for what you do and don't do. Because what you choose to do or not do is only going to donate to your future, not mine, but yours. And so you don't want to, I say this to my students too, I haven't said it in a while, which could be a good thing. I would say, you know, you want to make decisions that won't cause you to hate your younger self or hate your, so when you look in the mirror and you look in your reflection, like, why? Why did you do this? You want to be able to look in the mirror and say, thank you to your older self. Thank you to your, and you're saying it to your younger self. Because you know how a lot of times they have those videos or those um, post where people say, if you could tell your younger self, what would you tell them? Like, if, what kind of conversation would that be? And I tell my kids, like, and students, you want to be someone or grow up to become someone that your younger self won't hate or regret or having like be against, because you got to really be consistent. No, we're not perfect. Human beings have never been designed to be perfect. But living and experiencing and learning along with that critical thinking, because critical thinking is connected to conscience.
Yes.
You have to be able to, litigate, okay, why did I do this? Was that right? Was that wrong? What was the cause and effect? Why did this person do this? Oh, because I did that. How do you navigate mentally for that? And those parts are important. And so, in dealings with the kids that I have had to deal with, some of them that may be A1 kids, some of them, behavior wise, not so much. But it's learning the different kids and how to come at them in different ways, because it's just like a parent. You love all your kids the same level of love, but not the same type, if that makes sense. Like, I
Yes.
know my parents love us all the same equally, and their kids, they would, do anything for us. But it's a different type of handling and love with each and one of us. Like,
Yep.
one child may be more temperamental, one child may be more expressive, or like they have different levels. So, that's the thing that I've always taken in, enlightenment with, because I wasn't always, yes, I was a happy kid, but I was energetic, and I was always getting into something or trying to figure out how it works, and sometimes breaking things. So I'm like, oh, don't touch nothing else. So, but that's how I learned to fix things, which is funny. But, I think about that, and I also, meeting a kid where they were, or even to this day, meeting them where they are. So to be able to understand them and to be able to, say, hey, look, let's talk about it. And it came with patience over time, because I've had kids where, before I even decided to get into education, I used to be like, I don't know, because these kids, I'm not trying to catch a case. And sometimes let's be on 100 with it. These kids will try you, and you be like, no, I don't want to be behind bars. No, I don't look good in orange. No, I don't know. Mm-mm. I have things to live for. So you really got to be mindful of that when you step out and when you do these things. And that's what I, remind myself. And, with the combination of those things and meeting the kids where they are, is really, that's how, and remind the kids too, we all want to be heard, but do it in respect. Do it in a way that, somebody's going to listen, because when you are acting out, and you want to be heard, or you're being belligerent, nobody's going to listen. They're not going to listen. You're just going to be blocked out eventually. And, especially for the kids, I would say, not to just point this out, but to, in lines with educational standpoint, my difficult black males that I've dealt with, coming from, really having a soft spot for them, even though that would hit a nerve, because I was once a young black male, but also
Right.
knowing, you know, what society does or has been doing for quite some time, when, as a black man or a black boy, you get to third or fourth, and I think we talked about this prior, you get to like around the third or fourth grade. And if you're not improving, if your grades are not where they are, or you're showing signs of, defiance, and just you're going downhill, they started to, really categorize you into that prison pipeline, and looking at you
Yep.
as being a
There
part
you
of
go.
the prison. And so that right there was another unction for me, like, hey, yes, this young kid may be giving me a hard time, but guess what? I don't want them to lose. I don't want them to become a part of the statistic. I don't want them to be behind bars. I don't want them to be, forgotten about or not heard. And so that's where that deeper, you know, spot in that deeper like understanding comes from. And some of my students, they can, if you were to talk to some of them, they're like, yeah. And Mr. Morgan play, like, I was really hard on some of them, because I really want them to understand that I'm here with you, but you have to listen and understand, and getting back to critical thinking and why and the what, and behind what's behind that. And a lot of times when you have difficult kids, regardless of their background as far as race, there's a story there. And
Yeah.
they just want, and that's what connects to creativity. We all have a story as human beings, and sometimes our story may be the very thing that's causing us not to live. And
Ooh.
when you're able to release that story, or release that weight that you're carrying of your story, then you're able to live. And so if you're still functioning in that story, that narrative that either doesn't belong to you or that narrative that you were never meant to carry in the first place, how do you live? So, in a spiritual sense, you're being shackled by something that doesn't belong to you or no longer, fits the narrative, even as a
Right.
kid. Because, young people go through things, and I've worked with kids from different areas that have dealt with abuse in different arenas, that have dealt with neglect, like all different things, but they just want to be heard and felt, and also, you know, felt that they have a voice and they wanted to, they have somewhere to belong. And, being that reminded me of like, hey, again, of my purpose, but also having that level of compassion where I'm here, I hear you. Now, I may not have all the answers, but I'm here to listen.
Right.
I'm here to walk with you. If you need me to talk, fine. But that's all coming with respect. So, yeah.
So, what's the biggest misconception people have about arts education?
Well, being that when it comes to funding, arts education is not always the top of the totem pole
Nope.
because, you know, give or take, to make it very, not to sound, to make this sound, I'll say it not to sound dumb or to sound like just like basic, but arts administration education is not always taken seriously because like, oh, not everybody's an artist, or all that eclectic stuff, and that's, we're worried about bigger issues, with hunger and this and those issues. Why are we worried about arts? But the thing is, having that creative outlet and connecting to the arts is what keeps creatives and keeps young people that grow to be adults, that keeps them evolving, that keeps them imaginative. Whether you're creating as an architect, whether you're, as a lawyer trying to, how do you look at a case? As a doctor, how do you go into the operating room? Because at the end of the day, and I say this to my students, you're preparing yourself for your final debut when you're on stage or when you're rehearsing. You're in the studio, you're rehearsing your choreography, whatever big reveal that you're going to be on stage. So, like, just think about actors when they're playing a doctor, when they're not actually a doctor, but they're learning the nuances, they're learning all the different things of what it is to be that character and that individual, and that's prepping them for a movie. And we as viewers, it's something that is believable because hey, you've really studied that part, you really studied that individual, and it portrays. And so, but it's connected to what? Arts. And it goes back to, our process and what we do in the arts world and as creatives, it's something that's, you know, it's not always taken serious, but it's a serious process. And so, the funding behind it has always been the part of how do we fight for it and find new ways to fight for funding. And, how do we present it to where it's taken serious and it's not, oh, we just doing this to, trying to figure out some way to take money or do the things that we do. But our administration and having the structure behind it, people don't get that it's a whole process. And it's often, and that's where it's misunderstood, where, connecting that creativity to the adolescent, to the child that connects to the adult, that continuously has that outlet, that continuously has a way of expression, is what keeps that holistic individual. And, whether it be, in visual arts, whether it be performing arts, whether it be in just creating work, because art is all around us, whether it's a home being built, whether it's music being composed in the stores that you're in, whether it's clothing being designed, whether it's how to run a country, that's a work of art.
Let's let's talk a little bit about your entrepreneurship and purpose. What inspired you to start rocking on purpose?
Well, and the full title was D Rockin' on Purpose, but it spirals from my nickname. So D Rock is a nickname I gained when I was a kid. But Rockin' on Purpose is because, I think I was sitting, a lot of my students and friends and some colleagues was like, hey, Darian, you really should start some type of, podcast or show or YouTube or something. I'm like, really? Because I mean, I talk to them a lot and we talk and joke, but I'm like, sometimes do they ever take me seriously? I don't know, but I guess they do. But there's like, I would watch. I was like, really? Because I know sometimes I could. we can talk and I could get like chat on and talk, but I'm like, after a while, I just want to sit and be quiet because when I'm in my job sector or in the forefront, I'm expected to be, hey, let's go on in entertainment. But when I'm home, you know, behind closed doors, I'm just chilling and watching TV and very much quiet. So then it's like, oh, so put myself out there again. Okay, okay, but then thinking about what topics or also what's important to me. And I thought about my own journey and was like, hey, being a creative and a professional at the same point in the same place in my life. And I think that's an interesting topic because, in this day and age when, it's hard to balance life as an adult, let alone careers. And so it's like and I know so many people that I work with and I'm friends with that are creatives and professionals. And so my thing is, what does that look like for others? Because I know what it looks like for me, but what does it look like for others out here in the world? And what is their journey and how do they, balance those things out? Like for me, saying, how do I do this full time, but I have to do that part time? Or how do I do those things? But even for those who have the full time creative job, and what does that look like for them balancing out any other things that are going on in life? And then also uh, just seeing, talking to people as well as showing people how I function in purpose because of the things that I do at Walltown Children's Theater of teaching and administration and coordinating and events. We do a lot of things there. We've been doing it for 25 years, and I hope that we can do it 25 and beyond. And just kind of giving a background or a behind the scenes of what goes on there to see, for me and for the world to see, hey, this is a creative living a professional life. This is what we do. Or seeing like the studio creating pieces and because I see a lot of you get online and you stream and you catch yourself going to that black hole and you just looking at videos. It's like that's interesting. I could have did that video, or I could do this like this. Instead of saying I could do this, how about just do it? And there's so many like comical and theatric moments that are caught off tape in my life with individuals. Like, because life itself is a theater. So I see moments, I'm like, boy, if that was caught on tape, that was hilarious, or that was deep. And but maybe it's time to let the people see or peek into what it's like living on purpose or living in purpose. Because and maybe it might inspire somebody to say, hey, I really want to do that. Maybe I should do this instead of trying to get in a rut with going into that hamster wheel of a job that's never ending. But what purpose are you working it? Are you working it just to pay bills? Or are you working it to make a change? Because everybody has a purpose in this world, and we all have different purposes too as well. So it's like, how are you finding your purpose? How are you living in your purpose? And and if you haven't found it, why? Those different topics and situations of really entertaining that why and for what, and what is your future aspirations for reaching that look like. It's just trying to be a place of encouragement as well as entertainment, I guess.
So, what conversations do you hope your podcast will spark?
Hmm. How do we build a stronger community through arts and expression? How do we create safer spaces for creatives? How do we create communities, not just even in the creative aspect, but how do we get back to community? Because I'm also big on community. How do we get back to bridging the gap between these ages? The old, the young, the middle age. How do we connect all of those generations together? Like talking about what do we do? Experiment with block parties, experiment with, performances, you know, different ways of bridging gaps. Those are some of the topics and things I would love to discuss. And, getting different people from different backgrounds to share like what is your ideal, like you asked me, what's my idea of community, and what will be, you know, the way that you would press to create that world. And because I attend different networking meetings on every Friday and every Wednesday, and it's a group of us. And in the group, sometimes it changes. It could be anywhere from 25 people, and sometimes just 8 people or so, and from different backgrounds, different professions. And it's people that are either looking for work, or people that's looking to network, or people that are looking to you know just hang out and really learn about other people. And we talk about how we can grow as a community, whether it be, occupationally, creativity, creatively, or, just as a community in general. And I think it's really dope, and it's interesting how we do that. And it's very much therapeutic in essence, because you never know who you can meet. You can gain a new friend and say, hey, let's go do this. Next thing you know, you're creating something, and or you're just creating moments, because, like I said, life is short. You just never know, and take advantage of those moments. And creating a space where, regardless of your background, or creative or not creative, where's your purpose, and what do you see in as far as community? Because we all need someone at some point in time, or we need each other, and you never know, having an experience of creating that moment and being in the right space and right time, you might actually get what you need.
How did refined theory come to life?
Mhm. Well, that is a funny, 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 funny story, because so it's the thing about me, I'm a little OCD. And growing up in my house, my parents' household, there was chores every day.
Yep.
And so, there was not a day that we did not clean one room, or either all, like majority of the rooms. Our rooms had to be at a certain standard, um, until we learned how to wash clothes, putting them away when they were dropped off to your rooms, like different things like that. And then when I got older, I would help my friends clean up their place, or I would, like, I'd be hanging out, and all of a sudden we're talking, I'm just cleaning up. They're like, Darian, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know, just cleaning. Um, when I've house sitted for a couple of friends of mine, and like I'm there, and all of a sudden I just start cleaning up. They come home from the trip, like, did you just really rearrange this and clean this up? You were hilarious. I'm like, hey, and for me, cleaning has always been a therapeutic thing, because it helps with, like,
Right.
sorting my thoughts, which is funny. And to the point where, when I moved into my house about 2 years ago, and they're like, oh, we already know it's going to be, don't touch nothing, don't do nothing, because Darren's going to be like, clean it up or do this or put it away. And I thought about, and also with my background, of once upon a time in one of my lives, when I lived in DC, I worked for a staging company. And so, a staging and decorating company, we did homes and real estate and commercial properties for, and even some projects were landscaping. Um, so I did that for a small period. But I thought to myself, I said, how could I create another thing outside of my side passion? I guess cleaning and organizing, it will be a passion of mine, because whether I lived in an apartment, home, I used to always redo my space. And especially when I lived up north, and how apartments can be either one size or very small. And
Yep.
as a creative, I'm like, look, I need to change it up. It looks the same. Like, I gotta move some stuff around. And my friends would always laugh, and they'd be like, we were here 3 months ago. It was not like this. Every time we come over here, something's changed. And I'm like, hey, it's a space that I live in. And it does something for me, like with creativity, with a outlet, and with also how my mind works. And I'm not apologizing for it. It's just the way I'm, set up. But long story
How you're
short,
wired.
yeah,
How
it
you're
is.
wired.
And so I was sitting back one day, and it was like, oh, Darian, you should decorate, or you should do this, or you should do that. And I was like, you know what? How do I encompass all those things? Because we all know, when it comes to decorating and staging, and that's usually connected to real estate most times. But when the real estate industry is not booming and going, that business, the interior and staging is going to be kind of quiet. But how do I bring more longevity to this aspect and to where it's an all seasonal type of company? And so that's when I pulled into the idea of staging and organizing. So, or sorry, and cleaning. Because, hey, people are always looking to get places and spaces clean. And people are always looking to revamp or reorganize, maybe it be a closet or office or so forth. That's something that could happen anytime throughout the year. Um, Whether the market is up or down. Then you have staging. Staging is not just for, model homes or real estate. You could be staging your space. Like the space that I live in, the space I'm in right now, it was totally different from when I first moved in here. Because I said, hey, I want to change things up. And I really just revamped my whole space and reimagined it, but also brought it to life to where I can say, hey, I do multiple things, and it brings back to a holistic living and how you function. Because I'm a firm believer for myself that when your place is clean, organized, and neat, your mental runs better. You can sort things out better, so you know where this is and you know how to navigate that. Whether it's for people who work from home, whether it's somebody that's have a busy schedule going day in and day out, in and out, having a system or try to help, also trying to help a person create a system. People that are not home much, how do you how does your space get dirty? Well, if you're not home much, there's things like dust that collects. There's things like laundry builds up. All those different components play into, being in the bust and going up the busyness of the day or the week, and it starts to add up. And so, being a source in business where, hey, cleaning, organizing, staging, decorate, all those encompassed into one company, and really embracing all the little kink like nifty ways I like to think and process stuff. So that's kind of how we I evolved into refined theory.
Okay. So, we talked about, we discussed that we do Black History 365.
Mm-hmm.
And when I asked you who were the most influential persons in your life and career, you
Mm-hmm.
said your mother, your grandmother, Maya Angelou, and Debbie Allen were those people.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about your mother. Why
Mm-hmm.
is she one of the most influential people in your life?
Because she's in again. I don't want to make it sound like, oh, it's a Hallmark card or poster board, but she has been a true she has been a true symbol of resilience and strength. She not only was a former business owner, she's retired now, but running day she worked for my grandmother before she started her own. She Although my father raised three kids while being a business owner, um, you know then becoming a pastor, but also encouraging and ministering to people, and even her personal adversities that she fought through as an individual, you know and watching her still bounce back and really be loving and kind and also being authentic. That's one of the biggest things that I love and I appreciate so much about my mom is her being always true and authentic to herself and to the people that she loves and really delivering that. And that's one of the biggest impacts that, and why I always say, it holds a very special place for me.
So, what did her leadership teach you about Black womanhood and strength?
Never judge a book by its cover. Number one. Number two, never underestimate yourself, first and foremost. And watch what you speak over your life because those things that you speak may very well become. So watch your words. That's that's some of the biggest ones. I'm trying to think the the last one is, and I've culminated this from my mom, even though she doesn't say it, but when I think of her, one of my biggest thing is I can show you better than I can tell you.
Um, your grandmother. Your grandmother
Mm-hmm.
built community from the ground up.
Mm-hmm.
How does her legacy live through you?
Well, being that my grandmother, which is also was also the pillar of our family, and miss her every day. Watching her do all that she did, developing before she even, and this was before my life. She developed many different things. She started the daycare at the church that I was baptized at, that I grew up at, back at Russell Memorial CME Church in Durham, North Carolina. She worked for Head Start for many years, the original Head Start, before branching off into developing her own daycare, and then watching her build her daycare up piece by piece, and developing the staff, getting the children, and having, and for one to be an African American woman in the early 70s, having a daycare that served not only the Black but all community. There were Asian, Latina, Black, white kids from all over that went to her daycare, and watching the impact that she had on the different walks of life. And it also taught me, to embrace anybody, no matter what background they come from. And it made me also intrigued, because not only did my grandmother do that, but she also was blessed and fortunate enough to travel the world, many different areas, whether it be London, whether it be Australia, and to hear the stories about her going to these different places and experiences, even dealing with racism as a Black woman. And, being a Black woman in a position of power and in a business, there were a lot of adversities she had to deal with. The first couple of years of her having her daycare, in the city where I grew up at, the KKK burned a cross on her yard, and this was in the early 70s in Durham. And most people think, oh, how did she stand, or did she leave? No, my grandmother stayed. She didn't let that scare her. When they started breaking into daycare on and off, breaking into getting into it, she had the doors changed. And it just showed that, hey, you may think you have shaken me, but I'm not leaving, I'm not backing down. And to go from having a daycare, three daycares from the early 70s all the way to 2007 when she retired, that right there alone, and just being in the industry for over 50 years overall, it's, you know, that legacy right there. And watching before she passed, taking her to ceremonies where she got an award of community and creating, where people used to call her, oh yeah, I know Miss Bridges, that's the daycare guru. And I'm like, that's funny. People before she had passed, they would call her for advice on how to do this and how to do that. She was well in her or on her way into her 80s. And some of my friends like, why wish your grandma would open a daycare? I'm like, at the age of 80 something, who's about to do all, not much. So, but it goes to show you, like, how much work and how much things came behind it, like, the effects. And these were people that I grew up with, people that were, my age or a little older, and they're still talking about your grandma did care, grandma. I was like, yeah, I remember. And but to know people all over, and even when my grandmother in her personal life, when my mother no longer lived home, she was an adult and everything, and going. And for one, this story that impacted both my mom and my grandmother. Um, the 2 days after my grandmother's birthday, many years ago, she lost her son, her only son, and youngest son, from that was hit right in front of them, her and my mother. So for them both to really live through that, that's a whole significant thing in itself. But circling back or going fast forward to today, just watching the different impacts that she's had, and meeting people still even to this day, say, hey, you Wilhelmina's grandson. I was like, yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, who are you? That's like, oh, I went to your grandmother's daycare. And these are people, of course, older than me, some of them. So it's really interesting in knowing that, even my siblings and myself, we were also attendees of the daycare. And so we having that collective family legacy, and to see now students that had, attended her daycare. There, some of them are lawyers, doctors, senators, different things out here in the world, and professionals. And it's so, like, it's a beautiful thing to see. And, that's some of the things that I long, to have that impact, but in my own way, from the creative and the artistic aspect, building a community, building a legacy that, hey, you know, oh yeah, Darian did this or Darian was behind this, and that's leaving something behind because if I don't have a physical child or children to carry something out, at least my dream and aspect of what community is was left behind, and that blueprint. So that circles back to my grandmother and what she meant.
What does her example mean to you as a man leading in community spaces?
Hmm. Huh. As a man leading, well, it being that she a black woman, but now me being a black man, but also leading with consistency, leading with authenticity, but also leading with compassion is important because oftentimes, you know, you get wrapped up in the functioning of business and things and like that, and trying to make sure the doors are open, make sure everything is functioning, but also don't forget compassion. Don't forget to listen to your people. Your people meaning your community, listening to the people that work for you, listening to their needs and concerns. And I've seen my grandmother um, as a business leader, not if not helping, like whether she was lending a hand, money, or support, sending people to support, whether it be a parent, a family member, very much. Don't lose that sense of community. And even definitely as a black man, she always said, hey, you got two options. You go to school or you find a career. Or when you're in school, it leads to a career because you're not going to sit around not doing anything.
Okay.
And that was not an option. And so, as a black man, her standards were like, hey, I'm not trying to force the bar up here, but I'm letting you know you have something to reach for and aim for. And she and where it stems to Maya Angelou, because she always reminded me of her too, with the different poems. And I can't remember the name of this poem, but I know it was, about if you can't be a tree, be a bush. That poem. And, doesn't matter to not being better than somebody else, but being best of whoever you are and being in competition with yourself, not anybody else. Because, that's how I think she strived so far and so great because she wasn't competing with anybody. She was doing what she did and what she learned and how her experience went, not based off another daycare or another situation. No, she did what she did and what she knew best and how her journey took her. And, as a black man, she always inspired me to be authentic with myself, especially in leadership.
So, Maya Angelou's work speaks to millions. What
Hmm.
does she speak to? What does she speak to in you? Talking about Maya Angelou.
Hmm. It goes back to what's a famous thing we always say: people won't remember what you said, they won't remember what you did, but they will remember how you made them feel. And that right there alone is, it stems back to I don't care about what people think about me. I don't get paid to think what or to care about what they think. I don't get
Okay.
I don't get paid to satisfy them. So, but but my thing is, I do have an impact on how the feeling that's left after the experience because you want to. And Maya Angelou says this, I believe, in one of her videos or her interviews. She said you want to be remembered like, oh, they're so great, they're so kind. I hope they're well, and I hope that life is treating them well. Versus saying, oh hell, oh damn, here they come. Here they come. Like you don't want it's how you're remembered. You don't want to be, thought of like, oh God, here comes that individual. And when people think about you, because she says you add prayers to your life because
Right.
you never know. I'd rather add prayers than because there's gonna be people that's gonna pray on you, but you rather add prayers to your life where people say, I hope and I pray that they're doing well. That's because so that means you want to move in authenticity, in your true authentic self. And so that alone and not worrying about where life is going, but trusting the process and really being in the moment and you know, a lot of times when I'm having, a day that's not going so great mentally, I may pop on a video or encouragement thing from Maya Angelou and just listen to it for a while, and it brings me back. It levels me, and it helps me to, like, remember my roots, but also remember who I am in this world and my purpose, and also that, hey, this day may have been rough, but we're not going to worry about the day. Leave it where it is, and prep for tomorrow. Because what they say, the rear view, the rear back there is smaller for a reason. Don't focus on the rear view. Focus on the windshield. The windshield is larger. It's a bigger picture ahead. So that's where your focus should be anyway.
So, is there a poem, a quote, a moment from Maya Angelou that shaped your journey?
Yeah. For me, having to always deal with people in the forefront, and just in, as a creative, we can be very sensitive about our creations and about our journey. What does Erica Badu say? I'm an artist and I'm sensitive about my. And so, but in the journey of, like, when when you're a very passionate person, an artist, and
Right.
you know what you're going for and what you're trying to achieve, you're gonna have things that get in your way. But what was it, my Angela? But in your journey, you also want to be very discerning. And that famous one that says, when a person shows you who they are, believe them the first time.
Mm.
And that speaks volumes to me, even to this day, because spiritually, when you every time God elevates you to another level, there's going to be another demon waiting or another situation waiting to meet you right there at the forefront. So how do you deal with that? You got to discern. And you got to also remind yourself of how you react to a situation. You can't go into a new situation reacting the same way you did over here, because that's how you're going to repeat the same lesson. That's how you're going to go back to the same behaviors. And it's not like, people normally say, forgive and forget. Yes, forgive, but sometimes forget. No, 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 no. Why? Because you'll repeat the same thing over. You want to have that remembrance back there, so it reminds you and say, hey, yeah, let me not do that again, or let me not put myself in that situation where I'm having to swallow my words, or I'm have to say, Lord, I'm sorry, like, Lord, forgive me. No, be different than you were from the prior situation, because people are going to be people, and situations will be just what they are. But when it comes to interacting with people along the journey in life, just note, when a person shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Because no matter how much people like to, because in this creative world, in this professional world, people can really fluff and really present. Hey, I'm a creative. I work in the performing arts. I act, sing, dance. So, when we get in these spaces, we're all putting on a performance. But
Oh,
who are you after that? When the curtains close, when you at home,
okay.
who are you? Making sure, like, because hey, I tell my family, my friends, they already know what you see is what you get, whether I'm serious or not serious. And if I'm to myself or I want to be social, but it's not a whole like, oh, I'm being phony. No, if I'm gonna show you me, here we go. Hello, presentation. But you just got to be very mindful of how you navigate in this world, because people can really either be for you or definitely much against you.
So, Debbie Allen is a
Hmm.
force in the arts.
Hmm.
How has her work influenced your path?
Connecting back to me being an artist or a creative, that I have done so many things and explored so many, I guess, areas within the performing arts, whether it be dance, singing, acting, and also visual arts. I relate to her because I've seen all the different things that in hats that she's worn in her career. Whether it's been she's established her school, which is thriving and is beautiful, or whether she's choreographing for in her past when she's choreographed for the Oscars, the Emmys, or the Grammys, or she's directed Grey's Anatomy. All, like, her list goes on, and there's nothing that this woman cannot do. And I love how graceful and humble she carries herself, because it reminds us that, hey, we're here. We're here, we're present. And she's just taking things in and just soaking up and doing and creating and unapologetically. And, you know, that's the type of evolutional career I want to develop into where, hey, I'm creating, I'm doing this. Oh, I want to hop over here. I want to do this. Or I want to, hey, I might want to do a movie. Oh, I might want to direct this, a couple episodes on a series. Never limit her. She doesn't limit herself. And, that inspires me. Even like going back to the style, how she teaches. I so relate to how she teaches. Because for me, when I grew up in dance and music, I grew up old school. There's like either do it or don't get on the stage. Either do it or don't come in the rehearsal. Like
Okay.
you had to be tough, thicker skin, because these kids nowadays, they're a little bit more sensitive and fragile than we were.
Oh, way
And
fragile.
and it's hard because it's like y'all don't understand where I come from. Like I need you to really get it because you get it to them, you lecture them, and then the next thing you know, they're about to burst out in tears. No, I'm not trying to tear you down. I want you to understand that there's a process and levels to this. And you have to build, like, it's more of a building period. So you have to really kind of reform that foundation to restructure it back to a stronger place for, these young people. Because, you know, kids nowadays, even like growing up, they don't get it until you yell at them or go off on one good time. They're like, see, do I want to have to get here? And as for me, as being a black man in the educational sector, you don't want to come off as that angry black man or he's about to go off, he's crazy. No, because they will be quick to profile us as black men in any leadership or educational position and like, okay, we need to, and it's not a good look. But at the same time, to be a black man in these situations, you have to be a black man to understand. And, you know, I've been in arenas and I've been in situations where it's been misunderstood or conveyed as something else when it's not the case. And, you really have to be mindful of that. So in defense of your character, because when you're in arenas as such in the creative arts or arts administration or in the forefront, your reputation is everything. And you really have to be protective of that. And going back to Debbie Allen, she has done it so elegantly. Like she you don't hear negative. And if anything that people say, oh, she's tough. I'm like, but she means business. And other than that, she's a true vision of black excellence in the industry that will go into a room, shift a room, and also change things, the order, how things run. Debbie Allen she has a brand. She has set a brand of her own. And that's my something I look up to doing and to create and to build for myself one day.
So, in closing, can you tell us what are some words of wisdom and encouragement that you have for our audience? Tell them how they can connect with you via social media, your website, or any of those good things you like for them to know.
Yeah, I for my audience out there, I pretty much going back to earlier, if you have something that you want to do or start, whether it be creative, whether it be business, whether it be just a project and all, do it. You should have started yesterday. I use that same logic for myself because time is of the essence. Life is short. We don't know when we'll leave this earth, so make the most and the best of it. And also, don't forget to spend time with family, friends. Don't forget community. Community is key in any situation that you're in because, again, I say this, and this is what I live by. It takes a village to raise a child, but also it takes a village to sustain an adult. And I've had a village behind me all of my life, and I'm grateful for it. And be, don't get too full of yourself or get to a point where that savage mentality, as y'all like to keep it, or say, "Oh, I got this." No, it's okay to not have it sometimes, but to have somebody to lean on or community to lean on to help push you and push you back up to where you can have that support. And think about that when you're moving and navigating this world, and just find your purpose whatever that purpose may be. You never know. It doesn't have to be something creatively. It could be something. in the medical field, could be something in the, industrial field. It varies. Purposes are different. Your purpose, somebody's purpose could be just merely connecting with an individual, becoming an asset, or becoming a safe space in somebody's life. That could have been somebody's purpose, let alone because we have different purposes. And so, just being in the right time, right spaces, and really going for it. Because life, and I'll say this, break it down this way: life is pretty much a long hallway with different doorways going left and right. And that room all the way at the end is a meeting for your life. There's a meeting that's waiting on you to arrive in the room. There are people talking about things that they want to do with you, people talking about your different dreams, your different aspects, things that you want to carry throughout your life that God has placed on you and through you. But you just got to get to that meeting. So walking down that long hallway, you're going to have doorways from your left to your right that may be lessons, blessings, or distractions. So when you're walking through those different doorways, you might get caught up, but don't stay there too long, because there's a meeting at the end of the hall that's waiting on you to arrive. And to wrap that up, again, you can check me out on my social media. Instagram is D Rock Living on Purpose, or D Rocking on Purpose. And then search me on Facebook, Darian D Rock Moore, and be on the lookout for Refined Theory out in the market. If you're looking for cleaning, organizing, and staging, let me know. We have yes.
Is that it?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Well, look, I'm gonna I'm gonna say a few things here, and I'm gonna do a closing monologue.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a couple of minutes after I close the show?
Yeah.
So in closing, for everyone that's watched the show tonight, I appreciate your time. For those of you that are watching, especially on our YouTube channels, if you have not subscribed and enabled notifications to those channels, I would appreciate your support. If you could do that for us, please. So in closing, Darian, your story is a reminder that purpose is not something we chase. It's something we grow into. Your life reflects the legacy of the women who raised you, the communities you've served, and the young people whose lives you've touched. Your work is intentional, your leadership is rooted, your purpose is clear. Thank you for sharing your heart, journey, and your vision with us tonight. This has been America in Black and White. I'm your host, Charles King, and we'll see you next episode tomorrow night, same time, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You guys have a great